future of the Heat is at a pivotal crossroads, but while the team needs to find their next superstar, is Miami still a star destination? We'll debate that on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your podcast app. Have a great show for you today. We know that the Heat's top priority is going to be to trade for a star this offseason, but is Miami still an attractive destination for star players? We'll talk about potential targets, what needs to change for the Heat to actually get these guys in a second. But, David, you look at how things ended with Jimmy Butler, all the stuff that came out about Butler's relationship with Spo and Pat Riley after the trade, and, you know, whether or not you believe that stuff to be true or not, kind of besides the point. You add that to the fact that this team was 10 games under 500, got swept in historic fashion to the Cavs in the first round of the playoffs. I do think it's fair to wonder if this season affected Miami's appeal to star players. What do you think?
I think it has. I really do. I think it's not just about where you're heading as a franchise. It's also about the way that players feel comfortable there. Like, there are always going to be a player. There are always going to be a type of player who's going to say, Miami is still a great city. It's close to the Caribbean. It's close to vacation spots. It's great for international travel. It's the reputation of the city, I think, surpasses the reputation of the team at this point, because I think you look at this group and it just feels like it's years removed. It's actually years removed, but just 2 years ago, following a finals run, you had this future of the team, Bam Adebayo, you had Tyler Hero, you had Jimmy Butler, you had a team that looked gritty on paper. You knew what they were like on the court, and you had a player in Dame Lillard who said, I want to play in Miami. I don't know that you'll get that nowadays. I don't think you look at this team and they have any kind of clear identity. We talked about the loss of Heat culture and their gritty identity. I don't know if you can look at this team and find them to be anything more than an amorphous group of semi-talented, semi-all-star type players and say that there's a clear path to where they're going to be successful. And by and large, more superstars don't say, especially nowadays, don't say, I want to be that one player that takes them over the hump. They want to go to a stable, already established situation that's going to assure them of either one, money, or two, winning. And I don't know that Miami is in a position to do either in the future.
The point you made about Miami being more attractive than the team itself, I think, is a really good one. It's the thing that small markets will point to when it comes to Miami or New York or Los Angeles. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, right? No. Like, the Lakers got LeBron James because he wanted to be in LA, and they got a championship because of it. So whatever, you use what you got, right? Like, use your assets. But I do wonder what the Jimmy Butler stink of it all means to players and what that says to players. And I will say this. I mean, The Athletic does their anonymous player poll every year, and they asked 137 players, or 137 players, I guess, at least voted on this. What is the league's best organization? The Warriors came in first. The Thunder came in second. The Celtics came in third. The Clippers came in fourth. And the Heat came in fifth. Above the Lakers, above the Spurs, above the Cavs, above the Bucks. And you look at those teams, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Celtics, the Clippers, and the Heat. Well, the Thunder are at the top of the Western Conference. The Celtics are at or near the top of the Eastern Conference and just won the championship. They should be in the top of this, right? Like, most players will just assume, hey, those are the two best teams in the league. Those are some of the best organizations. The Warriors, new stadium, new arena in San Francisco, the amount of money that Joe Lacob spends on that team, all that stuff. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They were the dynasty to define the league basically after the big three Miami Heat. The Clippers, with, again, all of the money that they just spent on that team, the newest arena in the league. I think you just hear from players and coaches and people around the league how impressive that arena is. That probably has a lot to do with that. All four of those teams, winning teams, And then you have the Miami Heat just there for no real reason at number 5, other than this respect that players still seem to have for the Heat. I think you got to be pretty optimistic. That's a pretty positive thing, I think, if you're the Heat.
I think the reputation is well earned, but at some point you can't just continue to cash in on reputation. I see it from both sides. I totally agree with you, and you have to wonder about this sample size. Like if 10 Heat players answered, does that skew everything in Miami's favor? Considering only 130 players answered the poll to begin with. But I think you're right about there being a reputation that has been well deserved and well earned. San Antonio is just as stable an organization, obviously from a front office perspective, but they're in San Antonio. The city's just not like you've got Miami, you've got Pat Riley, you've got the idea of stability that permeates everywhere through this organization. And it helps that it's in a glamorous city like South Florida, or a glamorous area like South Florida. So I think it kind of feeds itself. There's both of those things are important factors to consider. But I don't know, like players are still going to want to come here because they're going to want to go to South Florida. They're going to want to be part of this, and they respect the culture. But I mean, there were players that I think were turned off by the idea of Miami's militaristic approach. And I think it's probably been overstated, but I don't think it's been overstated to the point where there aren't players that are like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of that 2-a-days camp or whatever, that kind of intense practices. Now, it's not the same thing as it was in the mid-90s with Pat, but it still has a reputation for being one of the toughest, most difficult, grueling camps and things of that sort. And Spo has a reputation as somewhat of a hard ass to have to deal with, and that's fine. Like if we're not for everybody, they wear it on their sleeve proudly. They love that about them, and so they want a specific type of player to come here and want to embrace this sort of culture and the idea of having to outwork your opponents. And so you're going to have some players to whom that goes, you know what, I could use a kick in the pants. I could use that boost. I need to revitalize my career. I need to restart something. I need to find my purpose, my joy, maybe.
That tends to be journeyman, right? And not the star player.
Exactly.
Those players don't need that
with
kick.
them.
Right.
Yes. They are the starter. They don't need an organization.
But
like,
I will say this.
I'm going to change things. Yeah.
They could say, hey, I'm good by myself, but I need the players around me to get that kick in the butt. And that's the supporting cast I need. And I know that no matter what, the role players in Miami, the people that they surround me with, those guys are going to play hard, and those guys are going to have that kick in the butt. And they are going to make my teammates better. And that's really what I need, because if I'm star player X and I haven't had the success that I've wanted to have, well, I know that, and maybe it's because of my teammates, or I think at least it's because of my teammates, and which is the more important thing. Then if I go to Miami, they'll at least, those guys are going to play hard, and we're going to be well coached, and those guys are going to be well prepared, and I don't have to do all this heavy lifting because they've got Heat culture and Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and the knee pads and the fat loss and the body fat measurements and all that kind of stuff. So I think that might be part of it too. I also look at the fact that the Heat were so bad this year to an embarrassing degree. Again, historic sweep at the hands of the Cavaliers. Although you could say, hey, they're the 10th seed. I saw the Jimmy Butler thing. Jimmy Butler is a very unique personality. I wouldn't say that he has a ton of friends across the league. So he's not one of those guys that everybody's going to take his side out of personal bias or friendship or whatever.
For sure.
They might look at Jimmy Butler and be like, that guy was an a-hole and derailed that season. And the only team to ever be the 10th seed and make it to the playoffs. Imagine what they could do with me on it. I also want to look at history here in terms of Miami. 3 times they went into a summer and acquired a star to superstar level player in recent history. Shaquille O'Neal, 2004. LeBron in 2010. Jimmy Butler in 2019. What happened the year before they got Shaq? They were 42-40, lost in the second round of the playoffs. Impressive for what that was, not a superstar joining a juggernaut. The year before LeBron came, 47-35, lost in the first round. Very forgettable Miami Heat season.
Yeah.
The year before Jimmy Butler came, 39-43, missed the playoffs altogether. Stars tend to look at Miami and say, they're one of me away, and they tend to be right.
I can't overlook, and I know that there are fans that are certainly aware of this. The one through line in each of those transactional periods and years is
Give it
no
to me.
longer a part of this team. That's Dwayne Wade.
He's part of the Utah Jazz.
That's right. It's not just that, though. I mean, Shaq comes to Miami because they got flashier.
Yep.
LeBron absolutely comes to Miami because of Dwayne being here.
Yep.
And Jimmy only comes here because Dwayne had just retired, but he did nothing but gush about the organization while the two played together in Chicago and became good friends. And Jimmy appreciated the way that Dwayne was treated by the franchise after he came back and helped him in his last dance and accommodated that and made everything possible about showing the love for that player, something that Jimmy really wanted. And maybe we tended to overlook that towards the end of his stint here in Miami, but that's something that brought him here, and that's something that would have kept him here probably had the front office shown him that love. That love translated into 120 something $million. Well, that's a whole other story. That's a whole lot of love, but other than that, though, you don't have Dwayne with this organization. What's bringing players here?
Well, that
Do they
is a
have
great
somebody that?
that is a great question, David. So thanks for doing the tease. Which stars could realistically consider the Heat, and who's going to bring them here? We're going to talk about that next, all coming up on today's Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider of some kind. If the first person didn't answer the phone, did you wait? No, probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answering common questions and capturing leads, so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
So I do want to talk about Miami's pitch to star players and who's in charge of recruiting, who could be the new Dwayne Wade for Miami. We'll talk about all that in a second. But I think it's important first to identify who exactly we're talking about before we get into kind of sculpting the recruitment pitch here. So which stars could realistically consider Miami? We'll talk about this summer, maybe even beyond this summer. But who are the next stars that would realistically consider, hey, I want to be in Miami? And I think now's a good time to bring up what Howard Beck said on the Low Post in regards to Giannis. Because Giannis is one of these guys that everybody's looking at. What's going on with the Milwaukee Bucks? If the Bucks decide to shop Giannis, if Giannis goes to the Bucks and says, hey, it's been real, time for me to try something else. If he does, what does his list of preferred destinations looks like? Because every star has a list of destinations. And Howard Beck said on the Zach Lowe show that he had poked around the league, and I'll just read what he says. Quote, the initial thing I got from one person was just like some rumblings that it's already just the big cities, one of the LA teams or one of the New York teams or maybe Miami. Not a big market, but a glamour market, mid-side market. I think they threw Chicago in there too, end quote. LA, New York, Miami, possibly Chicago for Giannis. We could do the whole, do the Heat have enough to trade for Giannis in the first place? Probably not. They can't beat, or I should say, they can't beat the best offers. But if Giannis just says, I want Miami, and tries to wiggle his way here, I don't know. We've seen how hard that can be. Damian Lillard tried it. It didn't work. He ended up playing with Giannis in Milwaukee instead, somewhere he did not want to be. But if Giannis says, I want to be in Miami, maybe he's got better luck. Maybe he's better at trying to get where he wants to go. I think it's interesting. But Giannis in Miami, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of player that Miami needs. we talked about it. They need an engine. They need a player that can create for others. That is the hub of an offense and a true powerhouse in terms of being able to generate their own offense and create opportunities for others as well. And Giannis is certainly that. Like, he is still in his peak. He's a great player. He is an MVP player. I may not personally prefer his style of play, but there's no denying its efficiency. And I think that he would make Miami certainly a better team than they are. I just don't know that a Giannis is what this team needs in order to be able to be a contender. You're going to have to still blow up the rest of the team in order to build the right team around Giannis, because we've seen that. Giannis by himself is a fine player, and that will be a good team. That's not going to be enough to knock off the best teams in the Eastern Conference.
That's the biggest
they had
thing.
They had Giannis at his best this past season.
Right.
He was in MVP considerations, and you saw what happened with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Does whatever Miami has to hypothetically give up for Giannis, is the supporting cast better than what he had in Milwaukee with Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton for half a season, and then Kyle Kuzma? Maybe yes. I don't know. I don't know what they would have to give up for Giannis. I would assume Milwaukee would ask for Bam. You brought this up on a podcast recently. I think it was a really great point. Bam and Giannis have the same agent. I don't know that Giannis, if Giannis wanted to be in Miami, I would imagine he would want to play with Bam. And heck, and even with, to your point, what does the team look like with Giannis that can compete with Cleveland and Boston? It would need Bam plus Giannis with probably Tyler Hero.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
so,
you would need all of the good players.
All your picks. Yeah, exactly.
So then you're like, okay, well, then what are you getting if you're Milwaukee? And you're like, I don't know. How much do they love Nikola Jovic or Khalil Ware or Pelle Larsson? Like, it becomes this question of, all right, we've got 3 first-round picks. One of them is 20th in a couple months. And then the other 2 are way out there starting in 2029. I don't know that that's really moving the needle if you're Milwaukee.
No.
Miami can offer salary cap relief. They can get Milwaukee all the cap space that they want in 2026. But what does a small market like Milwaukee care about cap space when you don't have Giannis attracting free agents?
Correct.
I don't know. Maybe not much, maybe a lot. I have no idea. It becomes really tough.
Yeah, I would say probably impossible. It's an odd list there, but all those teams are still, or at least they're still in playoff contenders, with the exception of Miami and Chicago. So it's like, what's the appeal there for Giannis? Like, he's kind of in the same boat now with Milwaukee.
So would it be? The Lakers don't make sense. I don't know how they could do it. You already have LeBron and Luka. That just doesn't work.
Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves, etc.
Yeah, I guess. But then how do you fill out the rest of that roster? That team is way over. I don't even know if that's allowed to happen, frankly, in the new CBA. I have no idea. So I'm going to say that's impossible, even if I don't know. Highly improbable. The Clippers, would they say, here's Kawhi? Can we get Giannis? Is that something the Bucks would even want? I don't think so, right?
I don't either.
Right? The New York teams, Brooklyn, they already don't have any good players. You'd have to give up Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson to pair Giannis with Cam Thomas in the top 5. You'd have to give up the top 5 pick, I would imagine.
If Milwaukee's honoring what Giannis wants at all, that's not going to be it, because Brooklyn's even in a worse place than Miami, and they're not going to contend for a title, even by adding a player as good as Giannis. Now,
the Knicks maybe could do. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Towns and Bridges and some picks for Giannis. Is that what? That, I mean, you could talk yourself into that if you're Milwaukee pretty easily. That's probably the best offer of everything we got. Chicago can't do anything. Here's Josh Giddey. I don't know, like what. That doesn't make any sense. So then that's why everybody keeps pointing at Houston, is they have all the things that if they really want to get involved, and Milwaukee doesn't honor this. Again, we don't know that this is the official list of. We're so far from Giannis even being on the trade block, but if Houston gets involved, they can trump everything. I want to get to some other names though. The other obvious ones: Kevin Durant, Ja Morant, who we talked about earlier this week, and there is some rumbling that Ja Morant would like to play in Miami.
Sure.
If he were traded. Zion Williamson, obviously going to be out there. The Pelicans have a new general manager. We're not really sure what their plan is with Zion, but That's a name that's out there floating around. And then Jalen Green, who was just eliminated from the playoffs. And I think a lot of Rockets fans are already throwing him into fake trade machine things. He's not a star player. I'm not trying to tell you he is, but he's a name that's out there. And now that the Rockets are eliminated, I thought we could at least talk about him.
Why? What are
your thoughts on Jalen Green are well documented.
No. I mean, look, I wasn't all that harsh when I was talking about him, and this was for anybody listening to the show who isn't familiar. On the Locked On NBA show 3 seasons ago, we were debating whether or not Jalen Green was better suited for the role in which he's been cast in Houston and with the team that was clearly struggling and rebuilding at the time. And I made the point, he seems like his career trajectory is more likely to be a really, really good 6th man, which is nothing bad to say about a player. And honestly, I think a lot of people in Houston still think he's a very good 6th man. Like, he would be the type of player because he's hot and cold. He can be really ignitable, to use a Heat phrase. And other than that, his defense is kind of wonky. His playmaking is up and down. You're not sure what you're going to get from him. As such, he looks like an ideal guy who can provide some of that quick scoring that you might need off the bench.
Rough first round of the playoffs for Jalen Green. Did not help his trade value or his standing in Houston, quite frankly. No, I think, Durant is the one that makes the most sense. I don't want to jump too much into all this stuff because we have so many. I want to do a whole podcast on Kevin Durant because I have a lot of thoughts on it. But in terms of the recruitment, go ahead.
No. There are a couple of other names out there, right, that I think are available.
Give them to me.
Is Trae Young still on that list?
It's a great question, right? Because the Hawks just overhauled their entire front office. I don't know what they think of Trae Young. I have no idea. I thought Trae Young had a pretty good season for Atlanta, frankly. I thought he did all the right things, said the right things. It seems like he's improved his standing within the organization, but the guys running the organization are not the guys running the organization anymore. So I don't really know what's up there. And then the other name, I guess, would be LaMelo Ball. And we have no indication that Charlotte is interested in trading LaMelo. And I don't know that the Heat would have any interest in LaMelo either. You can get to the Sacramento names: Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan. I mean, we're starting to get down the list here now.
Yeah.
Any other names out there?
I can think off the top of my head. No, you have to be in this right situation where either the team is looking for a new identity or a new path that doesn't include superstar X or star player X, or star X is just really at a point where they're.
Would you call about Kawhi?
I can't. Like, we made this argument against Morant, and at least Morant is a player who is still of the right age that kind of fits the right timeline of which Miami is on right now. They're finally on a clear trajectory in terms of they have a youth movement they can lean into, and Morant certainly fits that time frame. And now you're getting a guy like Kawhi who has some off the court concerns, a lot of on court concerns in terms of his health and availability, and I don't know why Miami would want to put themselves in that.
It feels like you would just be doing the Jimmy Butler thing again, right? We have no idea when you'll be available, if you'll be available. We're probably not going to know until the day of what kind of Kawhi we're getting, and then we just hope you morph into this superhero in the playoffs.
Which didn't happen.
It happened for 2 games for the Clippers, and then not so much, and then the Heat had success with Jimmy Butler, but they didn't win a championship. And I don't know that you can, I'm not trying to do a.
Seems like a lateral move, if anything. And then, how much longer can Kawhi play at this level? I'd like the idea.
Lateral move.
Yes, I like the idea of it, but it's just not for this price tag, and not with so many other X factors to consider.
It's funny because I was trying to look at other trades, like who would take Kawhi, and it's Kawhi Leonard. You're like, yeah, teams would take Kawhi, right? It's like, I don't really know what teams are out there that are lining up to pay Kawhi what he's making and then give up the players it would take to get to that salary and match salaries and get him. I don't know. I have no idea. It feels like he's probably just stuck with the Clippers, and they're fine with it. Whatever.
Maybe this isn't something we want to belabor here, but if you can get Zion Williamson, I think that's the off the court stuff is okay. It's not to the same degree as Morant's. There are concerns there, but I think maybe he's not the best on-court fit, but again, you can revitalize the franchise in terms of their public perception locally and nationally.
He's a star.
And you can get a star. Yeah, definitely he's a name. And there's a Duke connection permeating throughout the front office, obviously. He's kind of in that sweet spot of a star that really needs a new identity, a new path. And what team better than Miami to say, oh, this is a guy who's known for being maybe a little out of shape? Well, guess what we do here, buddy? And maybe transforming him for the rest of his career and saying, you know what? As good as you are, and we know that you're a superstar already, you can be at the very peak and become historically good, because we did it already. Look at 2010 and look what we did for LeBron James. I mean, I don't know if that's something that Zion will buy into, but that's the pitch. And
it would be the greatest. It would be the greatest science experiment that the NBA could conjure up, right? Is this guy who has all the talent in the world and whose only thing in his way is his conditioning. It's the only thing in Zion's way is his conditioning. And put him on the team that is the best, most well-conditioned team historically in the league. And let's just see. Literally, the body fat thing is the problem for Zion. This is the team that makes the low body fat measurements a whole thing in their mission statement. What happens if you put those two things together?
You acquire him well before camp starts, and you say you've got 1 week, and you hit up every Cuban joint in town, every Jamaican joint you want to go to.
Get
get as much flan, arroz con picadillo, whatever you want. Get your frijoles up in there. Get all those things. Load up on your carbs here and go hit those places up, and then you come here and you do the work, and that's and then let's transform your career. Like there's something really appealing about all that as far as being able to take him and transform him to the point where he can reach that next level. Because I think there's what the idea of him was when he was coming out of the draft is that he could be this generational player. Obviously, he hasn't lived up to that. There's been tantalizing moments, but if he could be that team that could take him and help guide him to that next point in his career, that's a feather in your cap. And then that's, again, ironically, what transforms this organization and the perception around the league as to a team that can not just use players and kind of spit them out when they're done with them, but can help you and can help you be the best version of yourself. And if you're willing to do the work and you're in the NBA, so there's a good chance that you're willing to do the work, then Miami's the place for you.
What changes are needed to Miami's recruitment pitch? Why somebody besides Pat Riley could be the key to the Heat getting their next star? We'll talk about it next. All right, so what changes are needed to improve the Heat's recruitment pitch? Because it has not been, I don't know if it hasn't been working necessarily, right? Damian Lillard did want to come here. Kevin Durant had Miami on his list of preferred destinations along with Phoenix. It's just Phoenix had more stuff to trade and they got the deal done. You could argue that they probably traded too much, but they got the deal done, which meant it's a zero-sum game. Miami didn't get Kevin Durant. Donovan Mitchell chose Cleveland over Miami potentially. But he also chose Cleveland over New York. He chose Cleveland over a lot of stuff. And I think that's more of just a Donovan Mitchell thing. And I don't necessarily think it reflects poorly on Miami that they couldn't get Donovan Mitchell to leave Cleveland. I think that was hey, I was just traded a couple of years ago. I don't really want to be this guy who keeps moving. I think we could do something with the Cavs, a loyalty thing. You see the leadership qualities that Donovan Mitchell have, which would have been great to have in Miami. But at the same time, because he's that leader and because he has those qualities, he decided to stay in Cleveland. So...
And he said he wanted to be here. And he also said he thought he was coming here. I mean, that maybe he didn't go out directly.
Donovan Mitchell?
Yes.
Well, when he was first traded from Utah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, because they didn't get it done. So I don't know that necessarily the recruitment pitch is the problem. But based off of this last season and everything that went down with Jimmy and all that stuff, I do think when we're talking about the recruitment pitch, star players and agents might have questions about what really happened with Jimmy Butler behind the scenes here. If you're a star player, you're going to want to say, okay, what really went down? How much of this was Jimmy Butler? How much of this was you guys? How do I think I'm going to get treated here? Am I going to get that special star treatment? Is that something that still exists? Or are we going to have an issue if I need to take a private flight? Because like I said, the private flight stuff with Jimmy Butler was always so overstated. Every star in the league takes flights separate from the team on occasion. It's a thing that happens. It was so overblown in terms of the reporting of the situation. But I think star players might come back to Miami and say, okay, are you really tightening the bootstraps here? Or am I going to get the same kind of treatment that, frankly, star players have kind come to expect out of NBA teams at this point. That would be maybe my biggest concern based off of this last season in terms of if I'm a star player and I'm trying to get my way to Miami, I just want to make sure everything's kosher there when I get there.
You can't trash Jimmy, but you can also make it seem like that he was responsible for a lot of what happened. And the idea would have been, you know what, you can say this, and why not? Because nobody's going to know any differently. We were going to pay him. We were going to give him the deal in the offseason. We were going to give him the money he wanted. And I understand how important it was for him to get that deal sooner rather than later. But what we wanted was a promise of him being able to play a high number of games. And we hadn't seen that. And then he started missing games. He started messing around. He started doing some off the court stuff that we didn't appreciate. It could have worked out so wonderfully. And you know how Jimmy is. We love Jimmy. We love who the player he was. He did a lot of great things for us. But you know he can certainly march to the beat of his own drum. And while you don't want to besmirch him, then at the same time, you have to make it seem like Jimmy just kind of flaked out, because he's flaked out in Philadelphia and he flaked out in Minnesota and he flaked out
Jimmy
in
being
Chicago.
Jimmy.
Jimmy being Jimmy. And so you don't trash him, because then that tarnishes your reputation and you won't come back.
Right. Can't do that.
But you can say, had he just waited a little bit longer, he would have been Dwayne 2.0. He would have gone his own last dance. He would have had a team for life, the way he said he wanted to. He said he wanted to retire and never wear another jersey until he did. Jimmy being Jimmy. What can we do about it?
So I think you're right. But you have to also answer those questions, and those questions are probably going to come. Those questions are probably going to come. I think the other part too is these agents and these star players now are really smart about the salary cap and how everything works. And they might be looking at this Heat salary cap, depending on what has to go out in a potential trade or whatever, and say like, okay, you got 5 players making $20-ish plus million a year. You're $11 million away from the first apron. And that's before re-signing Davion Mitchell, which seems like a guy that star players would want to play with, right? You do the hard thing out there. I'll do the easier thing over here. What's the plan there? What's the plan there? How are you going to build this roster around me? That's an Andy Ellisberg question. I'm sure he'll have answers.
I think that's a positive. Another positive in Miami's favor.
Great point. The other big thing is Bam and Spo are going to have to be at the center of this conversation. This is not Pat Riley dropping the rings on the table. That don't work anymore. This is a Bam and Spo conversation, I think. And those two guys in particular need to convince this new star player that this star player is the piece away. That's going to be Bam and that's going to be Spo. And that star player is going to say, you are 10 games under 500 and you think you're a 1 me away? Or do you think you're further away? And that'll be on Riley and Ellisberg to say, well, here's the plan. This is what we're going to do around you. But Bam and Spo need to convince this new star player, yes, we are 1 U away. You come here and you're going to win at a level that you haven't won at, or that you want to win at least. And Bam is going to be your rock, and I am going to put you in the best position to succeed. Because now Eric Spoelstra, unlike when LeBron came here in 2010, now he's got the bona fides. Now he's known as one of the best coaches in the league. Now he's known as that tactician. Bam, Olympic teammate, all these things, ultimate rock of a teammate, great leader, all this stuff. But they've got to convince him in that face-to-face meeting, you're the right fit for what we got going on here. I think it's on them to be the main recruiters. I don't think it's on Pat Riley anymore.
No, I would say not a knock on Pat, and I don't want his most vocal critics to use this as a talking point, but I don't know that he connects to early young 20-something-year-olds the same way he did to an older generation of player. And he's not pursuing Kawhi Leonard or Kevin Durant necessarily. I think he's pursuing somebody younger. And if that's the case, I don't know how effective that connection would be. I 100% believe that that Spo and Bam are the future in terms of how they connect with players. Bam specifically has those relationships. We've seen Spo with Team USA. We know how popular he is around the league, the kind of respect he's earned, and the regard that media members, fans, players around the league have for Eric Spoelstra. That's a huge feather in Miami's cap. I just, the other part of the pitch here is maybe you don't think that we're one player away, but we weren't one player away in 2019 either. And look how much success we had with Jimmy Butler. And I think you can still use that.
Yeah.
Like, everybody thought Jimmy was
that midseason trade we made. We went and like a couple months after that, we went and got Iguodala, Jay Crowder, all that stuff. We were in the finals that year.
Okay.
Look at what we did with LeBron. right? LeBron came here. We made it happen. We got Haslam back. We went out and a year later got Shane Battier. We got Mike Miller that first year. We did all the things that we had to do. We know how to build championship teams. We just need the U. We need the U to build around, and that's what we're missing right now. We went to the finals twice with Jimmy Butler with 2 different kinds of teams. I think that's right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens here, but that's the pitch. That's the recruitment. Easier said than done. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.